when we look at personal safety, um, people tend to kind of put it into categories. I think the physical aspect and the non-physical aspect. Um, and I guess you could break down the non-physical aspect into potentially two parts. So the ability to detect danger or a threat, and then the other aspect of that would be the ability to prevent it from becoming physical. So sort of the detect, sorry, not the detect, the defuse and de-escalation aspect. So on our lone working, we were doing all three, which was nice. So we give a whole rounded experience and understanding and learning on all three areas, really. But if I was to choose what the most important aspect would be and what would be the easiest to learn, I'd say it's the first one, the detect. Well, I suppose the good news is, however many years people have been living so far, they observe human behavior every single day. So they might actually be quite good at it, but it's a bit hit and miss. So we have to give some kind of framework to it, really, and just sort of empower it. So the main principle really is to address something called baseline versus anomalies. There's quite a well-known book on this called Left of Bang, and I was fortunate enough to train with a guy who was part of that US military um, R&D around that topic. In fact, they spent millions of dollars on that topic, and what came out of that sort of material knowledge, I kind of was lucky enough to glean from this person, and I guess I mean it's you can use it every single day, and baselines and anomalies applies to many different things. So, for example, if I was to define what they both are first, a baseline is the norm, and that's relevant to the context. So it might be, for example, um, the in fact, I'll share the story that I share with often with a group. Just we do a lot of storytelling just because it tends to get the point across in a more powerful way. So I talk about the tsunami that hit Japan in 2011 that occurred after a huge earthquake. And so I'm just going to lead up to this. So we talk about what happened that day in this tiny little village in the east coast of Japan. And basically, when that big earthquake hit, I mean, as you well know, Jerry, because you've been to Japan many times, lived there, earthquakes are very frequent. So that's kind of part of their norm. That's part of their baseline. However, this huge earthquake, the biggest one they've had for years and years, so that was out of the norm. So this little village, they had alarms in the village, and the alarms went off, and people took cover until the earthquake had passed. And of course, they're doing the normal kind of activities after an earthquake, such as clearing up the mess. However, this is where it gets a bit interesting. Is then the tsunami alarms went off, which they're kind of like the old-fashioned World War II alarms, but they have a different sound. The problem being though, in all those generations of the village, no one had heard this alarm go off before. So we kind of got this fundamental problem, which ties in with all of this, and that's kind of our number one enemy being denial. So, going back to what you asked earlier about, well, people observe human behavior every day, but are we really conscious about those threats or not? As I say, it's a bit hit and miss. Anyways, so the tsunami alarm went off, and a lot of people ignored it. Okay, but it gets more interesting when you go to not sort of much the village, but you go to the beach. So, and at this point, I normally ask the group, I say, do you believe that you can predict a tsunami is coming before you can physically see it if you're on that beach? I said, because if you wait until you physically see it, you've got a time issue of getting away from it in somewhere safe. Absolutely. It's an action reaction problem again. So, um, and some people say no, I don't think you can. Some people say yes, I think you can, and some people even have the answers as to yes, you can, and these are the cues or the indicators. Um, so anyway, it gets interesting on that beach. So one of the indicators of a tsunami, so this we would call an anomaly to the baseline. So the baseline, the norm, as you well know, of the behaviour of water, the sea, it is a high tide and low tide twice a day. That's the norm. However, when there's a tsunami approaching, as you may well know, the tide goes really far out, but the main difference is the speed. It goes out super quick. It went out so quick that day that people observed fish flapping around on the beach. That's how fast the water went out. But the problem, that's definitely strange. Never seen that before. It's a huge anomaly. So now you get these various reactions to that, where some people just kind of ignored it and just, well, okay, whatever. Some people were like, okay, that's not right. And in fact, some people walked towards the fish out of curiosity. And unfortunately, what they didn't realize is they're walking towards the threat, upon doing that. So, it's we talk of files and folders, and if in our brains, in our computers, we don't have the correct files and folders, i.e., the indicators of what threats look like, we're gonna it's gonna slow us down. We're gonna hesitate. We're gonna be confused. We're gonna have huge denial hitting us, and it's gonna be a difficult challenge getting through denial, and therefore quick to action. And that's the good news, is you can very easily fill these files and folders with the just some useful information. That's why it's quick to learn. And once you've got that information in your file and folders, when your computer does that hard drive search, there's something it's going to find. And now it's just an emotional issue of, am I going to get to action? What am I going to choose to do now? But here's the other side to this story. On that beach that day, there was a UK student of geology. So she knows about earthquakes. She's got the files and folders in her head. She knows what the indicators of a tsunami are. And she knew when she was on that beach and she saw those fish and that tide had gone right out, she knew that a tsunami was coming, even though she couldn't see it. And the amazing thing is she went and saved lots of lives. She grabbed as many people off that beach as she could. And that's the difference, just quite simply, is having that information. So it's really quick and easy to learn, just in your files and folders. However, with human behavior, sometimes the file and folders we already have might be corrupted. So, we might expect a psychopath or some kind of predator to look a certain way or be of a certain age or race or gender, and I'd call that that's kind of corrupted. So that's a story I share with the group just to kind of demonstrate the power of establishing a baseline and what a baseline is in any given context, and then you can start being aware of the anomalies. And there are general and specific indicators that you can kind of share that are, I would call, real threat indicators, regardless of the context. We do a fair amount of video analysis of real situations, and we get people to establish what the baseline is, and then just narrate and consciously spot the anomalies. And we can play those videos again and again and just get more and more aware of what those anomalies are. So, they don't even have to stand up to do that. So as much as we love the physical side of training, this is quite quick and easy to learn, I have to say. It's like, for me, that connection between your subconscious brain and your conscious brain is the really important pathway to safety. So as you say, intuition is trying to do that for you. It's trying to make that connection. It's giving you that feeling, or that persistent thought, or whatever, the way it communicates. Because as I say to people, I say our brain's amazing. It's taking in so much pieces of information every second. It can't possibly share all of that information with you consciously every single second. Otherwise, you'd be a mess. You just couldn't process it. But when the person, when it's significant threat, it will definitely be a powerful intuition signal that's sent. But I think then you consciously might need to go, well, is this a threat? And that's, I think, when you can become conscious of those threats, that's what really combats denial. It's like uh, when I was doing my advanced driving for part of my bodyguard close protection training, is you when you're driving, you narrate all the hazards. So that process of narration brings that subconscious observation, because when you're driving, you are normally, hopefully, aware of those hazards, but you aren't consciously necessarily. Like when you drive and you go, I can't remember that journey for the last 5 minutes. I was an autopilot. So that's kind of fine, but if you are in a situation where you're going to try and combat denial, you might need to kind of outwardly narrate what you're experiencing and have that sort of open questioning, like, what am I observing here? Why am I feeling this way? And then if you've got those files and folders in your head, they very quickly kind of pop up in your search, especially when those hopefully they never occur, but if they do have one of those really unlucky moments, they're rare. So again, that's the other issue to this, isn't it? It doesn't happen every day, so their alertness might drop and they get a bit complacent maybe. And yeah, sometimes the way I put that across to people is that human beings love learning the hard way historically, and that's why we have the whole health and safety executive nowadays. And they're on point with it. Is so many things, bad things happen, that maybe are foreseeable, but we're just making this whole process more conscious again now. Even with seatbelts, I use the seatbelt analogy sometimes. How many years did we drive a car before it became law that we had to wear a seatbelt? So how many deaths did it take for us to realise that seatbelts saves lives? And this is all in hindsight. But like you say, with a new social worker, they hindsight's no good. They need foresight. So that all ties in with the value, I think, of threat detection training is giving people the ability to have the foresight rather than hindsight, because sometimes hindsight, it's too late.